Well, European leaders had put in a lot of work and preparation ahead of this call because they knew that this was their opportunity to try and have their voice united ahead of that all-important summit between President Trump and President Putin on Friday in Alaska. They, of course, don't have a seat at the table, but they want to still make sure that their message is heard while that meeting takes place. And that is a message that they don't want to give up on Ukraine, and they don't want to cede large amounts of territory over to Russia as part of any sort of quick fire peace settlement. Now, we know from the German Chancellor that he has said it was a very good call between European leaders and President Trump. He said that Europe is fully behind the president and he can expect their full support as he sits down with President Putin on Friday. He also touched on the controversial issue of territorial concessions. Now, this idea is certainly being floated in parts of the White House of Ukraine handing over territory to the Russians in order to reach a peace settlement.
Die Ukraine ist zu Verhandlungen über territoriale Fragen bereit. Dann muss aber die sogenannte Kontaktlinie der Ausgangspunkt sein. Und eine rechtliche Anerkennung russischer Besetzungen steht nicht zur Debatte. Der Grundsatz, dass Grenzen nicht gewaltsam verändert werden dürfen, muss fortgelten.
In other words, the current front line of where soldiers are fighting, not large states or large areas of territory that the Kremlin has indicated it would certainly like to get its hands on. Now, from President Zelensky's side, he said that he has told President Trump that President Putin likes to bluff and likes to drag out negotiations in order to try and buy more time for his troops on the battlefield. He said he warned the president about that tactic and asked him to keep it in mind as the two leaders have discussions.
Я сказав президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки і всім нашим європейським колегам, Путін блефує. Він старається натиснути перед зустрічю на Алясці на всіх напрямках українського фронту. Росія намагається зобразити, що спроможна окупувати всю Україну. Безумовно, це їх бажання.
But what he also said is that the basis for any sort of agreement that maybe is reached on Friday needs to be an immediate ceasefire. That was a message from the Europeans as well. They see that as the baseline for any sort of future negotiations, an immediate ceasefire in the country, and then they can discuss longer-term issues like security guarantees and territorial concessions. Now, if that doesn't happen, well, what President Zelenskyy is saying is that it is then time for the United States to slap serious sanctions on Moscow, including potentially secondary sanctions, which could bring in other countries that do trade with Russia. Certainly, economists here in Europe believe that is crucial for funding President Putin's war efforts in Ukraine. We also heard from the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, who was on that call. He said it was a good call, but he said going into Friday, the ball is now in President Putin's court. Trent, CNA, Berlin.